Welcome to the Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Most founders obsess over product, process, performance, but rarely step back and ask a very simple question. How is my mental performance holding up under pressure? Now, today we're going to do a deep dive onto what it means to go through leading in chaos, but also how to rebuild after failure and how to have your exit in mind. And today, in today's episode, we have the amazing Luke Tobin here on the show, ladies and gents. Now, if you don't know who Luke is I suppose he's a bit of an influencer over on LinkedIn. This is where we met, actually. He's a 3 times exited founder. His area of expertise actually is in digital marketing, amongst other different things. But also he won the Great British Entrepreneur Award for the creative industry back in 2020. And he's got now a personal investment portfolio with some big companies like SpaceX, for example, and Earthly, amongst other companies. But today we are going to be doing a massive deep dive, and we're going to be really talking about the mental and emotional side of entrepreneurship. You know, it is a really big passion for me and Luke and educating you guys about this, because again, it's one of those particular topics that I feel gets really kind of pushed under the rug and not talk about enough. So without further ado, Luke, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. I mean, I love LinkedIn. I get to meet some amazing people like yourself, and you've accomplished so much in such a little amount of time. So congratulations.
Thank you. Feels like it's been an uphill battle, but I appreciate that. And thank you for the very nice intro. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, man. You're welcome. So let's get some context, because there are people out there that don't know who Luke Tobin is, of course. Give us some context, because I know that you've been an entrepreneur for quite a number of years.
Mm-hmm. No, sure. I mean, I've always been innately entrepreneurial. First business was when I was 19 years of age. It was a bar hire and events company. Started importing wines from all over Europe and selling them at festivals and gigs, and had some bar rigs. And over time, I started off with kind of like a purpose made in my dad's garage, like pop-up bar unit with some marquees, which I got from somewhere like Tesco's. Realized they didn't stack up very well when you were in kind of entrenched in muddy fields with lots of people trying to drink beer. So then started to invest in buying better coolers and a kit over time. But that was a fascinating, fun business, very hard business to make good money at, but it was fun. After that, I had a kind of tiny spell, 2 years or so employed in recruitment, and thought, oh, okay, I don't really like this, but it was good for learning some sales patter, I think, and actually kind of forcing me to do cold calling and figure out that, okay, well, yeah, I need to be able to sell. Then I had another business, which was kind of a modeling agency, which was someone convinced me over a beer that was a good idea, and it lost a lot of money and was a complete flop, but it was fun at the time. And then
you modeling? Was that you modeling or other people?
Well, other people. Definitely not me. I wish. No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. But we're selling basically portfolios to people that wanted a shoot. And we had a couple of studios dotted around where people could go in and get their pictures taken. We would then submit that portfolio for modeling work effectively on their behalf as like a third party agent. There's quite a few businesses that do this, but most of that market has been consolidated now into big players. It's very fragmented, and it's very hard to survive as a small player in that space. But fascinating experience for a few years, and then various other bits along the way. But the things that have worked best for me, I had an experience day business that I set up in Australia. I was living in Oz for 3 years, and I was selling car racing, hot air balloons, paintballing, kind of jet ski days, everything you could imagine offline. So originally it was kind of direct selling in shopping centers, high footfall locations, events, that kind of thing. I had a team of 60 Aussies and backpackers going out and selling these packages in these high footfall locations. It was fast. Honestly, it did
Sounds
so
like a
well
lot of fun.
over there. It was
Oh my
so
God.
much fun. So much fun. Commission only sales for those guys, but they made a lot of cash. I brought the same model back to the UK. There was a couple of competitors here, which in the end, one of them bought me out, which was great. But that was my first step into understanding the world of online, because at that point, everything I'd done had always been pretty much offline and direct selling of sorts. Somebody said to me, why don't you have a website so I can reorder? And I was like, well, that's a good idea. Maybe I should look into this website thing. This is like 2009, 2010. Google was just starting to get traction. So I fell in love with digital marketing and built a really cool website. Had nearly 1,000 products on there by the time I sold the business.
Wow.
So under NDA, but sold to one of the big five experience day companies, which was a really good experience for me as well. And then off the back of that, realized that I loved marketing and wanted to do more, but actually had no real baseline skills other than what I'd self-taught myself. So went and took a job at an agency. Just went in as effectively a marketing manager in an agency, and absolutely fell in love with it. Was there for 3 or 4 years and thought, there's a disconnect here in the delivery that's being given, what's being sold. So set up my own agency then. Started off with a small web design and PPC agency, flipped that 3 years later, then built a bigger one and sold that in late 2022. So it's been an interesting ride. It's
really interesting how you describe that, because you started off in entrepreneurship and then it kind of didn't really work out. Then you got a job. Then you kind of thought, well, that was a bit shit. And then you opened another business. Then you emigrated country. Then you found another job. Then you opened a new business. It was just really interesting just to hear that journey.
Yeah. A lot of kind of ducking and diving and jumping into things. I think when I kind of came out of the business, whether it was an exit, failure, whatever it was, I was like, okay, I need a bit of stability. And the stability was the job, right? And I was like, well, I'll take a job for a year or two. And then I very quickly got the itch again and was like, oh, actually, this is just not for me. So I've probably had, 3 jobs or something in my life that are like commercial or corporate jobs. But around that, I've always had my own stuff. So that's, and that's really who I am now. I can't imagine taking a job, actually. It was really hard. I sold that last business. I had to spend 2 years as a co-CEO of a company of 1,100 staff, and actually there's a lot of process and a lot of red tape, as you can imagine. God, it was painful. Don't get me wrong, great company, just that was a real change of pace for me. So
bureaucracy,
very much so.
Goodness me. Well, it sounds like a very exciting journey, though. I mean, when you were having your job, I mean, was there a reason apart from stability? Did you want to learn something? Was there something that you felt that was missing?
Most of the time it was strategic, yeah. So the marketing agency example was perfect. So I knew that I needed to learn more. There was a lot of people that knew a lot more than me, and I wanted to raise my knowledge. And the best way of doing that was to surround myself with people that had been doing it for longer and in an environment that would train me. So and great that they paid me to learn. So
even better. What's really interesting actually is we endorse a lot of people to go off and find a job to learn from different skills, and you have kind of like used that job as a bit of an accelerator, or as a kind of I suppose an increase in your knowledge, where rather than going to university to get a degree for it, you got a job instead and learn it that way, right?
Exactly. I often, a lot of my friends went the other route. They did the uni route. Most of them, I'd say 9 out of 10 aren't actually using the degree they went there for. I think that's very typical these days. Obviously, a degree still makes sense if you are in a career that demands it, like a doctorate or whatever. But actually, generally, I find for me, I had that extra 3 or 4 years out in the world, hustling and figuring stuff out and failing and trying and failing and trying. I think that served me so much better than going on 5 nights of a piss up and, partying and doing a little bit of work here and there. So, personally, I still did that, but I did it whilst earning some money and learning along the way. So yeah, I think it's different horses for different courses, but yeah.
Like it, mate. Like it. Tell us, you mentioned 3 failures that you were part of the journey. Which of the failure did you feel like had the biggest impact on you, that was kind of like that maybe had questioned who you were as a person in terms of your identity and your DNA and what you're about? What was that? That sprung to mind?
Definitely the modeling one, and the reason being, I was in my early 20s. I'd had a reasonable success with that first business, the drinks company. I'd certainly made some money. I didn't sell it for much, but it was, I was pleased with the outcome. But the next one, I ended up sinking all my savings and a loan into, and came out, in debt. I think at 22, I was 26, 27K in debt because of it, and was kind of treading uphill again, and kind of felt very, I moved out of home when I was 16. I've always been quite independent in that sense for lots of different reasons, but I'd put myself in quite a vulnerable position. And I think I went through quite a lot of fight at that point with myself to be able to be a risk taker again. So I actually kind of went into that job mode then for a bit with the recruitment agency and all the rest of it, as almost like actually, Luke, maybe you're not cut out for this entrepreneurship thing, get your head down and earn some money. And what I realized was trying to pay that sort of level of debt off with a job was bloody hard work. So actually, in the end, the only way I did it was by being entrepreneurial again. But, at the time, I kind of fled to what I thought was kind of a bit of safety. So yeah, that did have a big impact. I think that slowed me down a little bit. So, my next business didn't really come out. I didn't do it till another 3 or 4 years later. So, it definitely slowed me in my tracks a little bit.
It's really interesting. It can have a real knock-on effect, can't it, to your mental and emotional health more than anything else. What were your big struggles mentally and emotionally like? What was your day like when you woke up in the morning? What were the struggles that you were trying to figure out?
I think anybody that wakes up with debt or with some sort of negative equity of some description, I think it does weigh on you, right? That you're working not necessarily for yourself anymore. You're working just to try and pay that. And I know that's the majority of the world. And what it did do in the end, and it did take me a while to get out of feeling sorry for myself, it gave me the drive to sort it out as well. But I did go through that roller coaster of emotions, which I think is natural for everybody to go through. I think also the kind of general emotional intelligence that I have now hadn't developed at that age. I was still kind of learning about myself and figuring it out. And I probably didn't have the self-confidence to go, all right, well, let's shake this off and go again.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. I guess age comes with wisdom.
It does. The other thing I didn't know at the time, which obviously is the world I kind of operate in a lot more now, is that you can go out and you can raise money for ideas, and that you can get investors, and you can do all this stuff like that. That all was completely alien to me at that point in my life. Whenever I've started businesses, certainly until my 30s, I never even thought about raising capital. Never even thought that you could go out and use other people's money to make money. I just literally just grafted my way through organically.
Love that. It's really interesting. Like most people, when they think of failure, right? Or they have this, I know certainly for me, like when I had the fear of failure, which is kind of, sometimes it can be embedded into your DNA, Luke. But you kept going, which was really interesting. Like from your perspective, like what was it in your psychology that helped you to say, do you know what? Okay, well, I'm not allowing this to make this the person who I am today. What was the catalyst? What was the thing that kind of said, do you know what? No, I'm going to go again. Because a lot of people, they would have just thrown the towel in, right?
They would have. I think I've kind of pondered on this and meditated on this quite a lot. I think, and I've seen this with other entrepreneurs as well that have kind of gritted through, but I think the fact that I left home so early, my mum died when I was 20. I had quite a lot early on in my early years that built a lot of resilience. And I think actually what I realized was, and I've always had this kind of, this kind of superpower complex where I'm like, I believe that I should be great at something, and I believe that I've got more to offer. And I've always questioned, people around me that don't believe that about themselves. I've always found that quite difficult, and sometimes quite draining on me, because I am innately, positive and focused. So for me, I think I've always had that belief, but I've obviously had knocks like anybody. I'm human, not superhuman, unfortunately. So I have had those knocks along the way, but I think the biggest thing for me is I've been resilient because of those early year kind of learnings and struggles.
I think that's a really good point. It's really humbling as well. And, I do believe that things that certainly things that in early in life can help us to really give us this, what I call thick skin. But more importantly, I think it gives us perspective and helps us to kind of like self-reflect. You know what I mean?
It does. It does. I mean, we get multiple types of people. We definitely get two types of people when it comes to this. So some people would go through those early year struggles, and they become victims and victim-minded, and they never get out of that their whole lives and actually effectively waste their lives. And it's like, well, it's about, am I going to let this happen to me, or is it happening for me? And I always like to take things as like things happen for me. They're not happening to me. They're in my control. Oh, don't get me wrong. Things happen to you that you can't day to day control. However, if you change your mindset and go, this is happening for me, even when something really bad happens, it's like this is happening because it's part of the journey that I'm on as an individual, as a human on this planet. And I have to make heads or tails or sense of it somehow. And the only way to go is forward, because otherwise you just sit and you wallow and there's no, so you just keep pushing on. It's resilience, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. They say that if you're not growing, you're dying.
Exactly. And we're definitely all doing that. So we need to focus on living for sure.
Absolutely. Love that. The latest business that you sold for 2022, which was the digital marketing agency, you started up with, if I'm not mistaken, 100 quid. Is that right? Is that correct?
Yes, it is right. Although I will caveat that I had more than 100 quid at the time to put into it. So
I was going to say
a few people have questioned that and have gone, hang on a minute, this is a bit of a misdemeanor. I'm like, yeah, but I literally put 100 quid into a landing page, and that's the truth. And then I started making phone calls on my mobile. You could argue the mobile costs if you like, but basically I got my first few clients with 100 quid invested. It's a true story, and obviously grew that to a substantial size from there.
So hang on a second, let's backtrack here, right? So you literally just got on the phone to potential clients and said, hey, I'm starting up a digital marketing agency. I've got a couple of spots. You want one? Is that what it was, literally?
Exactly it. So I'd worked in this other agency for a few years. I knew the niches, the industries that I could serve well with my knowledge. And I called them and said, I've left this agency. I'm setting up on my own. I'm looking for one or two clients in your sector, your industry. This is my experience. These are the results I used to get. Would you be keen to have a chat? And they were like, okay, let's, and obviously you can go for a bit of a numbers game on that, but enough of them said yes. Yeah.
Very good. Isn't that interesting? Do you know what? One thing that sparks to my mind, right? And you'll know this. In the world of entrepreneurship, right? And you'll see this on LinkedIn about the fact that, people talk about funnels and they'll talk about AI and automation. And what about going back to the old school and just picking up the damn phone and just making a few phone calls? Where did that go?
Adam, people are innately lazy these days, right? They want to hack it. The problem is, don't get me wrong, I do all of these tactics from automation to AI to whatever, but I still will do a good old fashioned webinar or get together in person, roundtable, whatever. I'll pick up the phone if I need to. Like basically, early on in starting a business, you must hustle. It's as simple as that. And if you're not willing to hustle, then you're lazy, because you got it, and actually you don't deserve to be successful. All of the best entrepreneurs I know are good at hustling and ideally selling. Actually, a lot of them are very good at selling what they do and what their dream is, either their vision or actually managing to build revenue out of selling. So for me, that's always been the critical piece in the middle of it. And then it's finding other people to expand on that and fill in the gaps, and if you can do that well, you've got a business effectively.
I think you make a really valid point there. I do feel like, especially when it comes to, there's this balance between building a personal brand through content creation and then kind of like what you do as in your day to day. And I feel like, I don't know about you, but I see so much people focusing on building that personal brand. And listen, I'm all about building personal brand, ladies and gents, right? And because it accelerates trust. There's no doubt about it. But one of the things that I don't see enough is, like you had said, just picking up the damn phone, even stuff like guerrilla marketing that you've never seen anymore. Like, people are kind of trying to make things complicated. They're adding layers. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
That's just kind of how I feel.
No, I agree. And look, I have to echo that I think personal branding in 2025 and beyond is absolutely essential, right? I think having a if you have a business, your brand should be as strong, if not stronger, than the business brand effectively. If you think about the biggest CEOs of the world, your biggest companies, you think of the CEOs next to them, they're all as famous in some ways. I think it's important, and it does build trust and credibility. It makes closing easier. It makes referrals easier. It makes everything a bit easier. But it takes time. It takes commitment, But I do think as things become more digitized, and I talk about this, I do a lot of advisory work for agencies because of my background. I talk to the founders, I'm like, going back to that real world human connection piece now, more than ever, is why someone will still use an agency. So in the future, people don't use agencies just to spin out a load of graphics. They don't use agencies just for a bit of content curation. They use them for that human connection element and that really understanding, like at a deep level, what your short, middle, long-term goals are and being able to articulate that in a way AI never can. And that's the thing. Yes, you can. It's a blend of that human experience and strategy with AI outputs. And that's what the future, I think, of the marketing industry looks like. So that's what I tell them. And actually what that means is go back to some of those fundamental things. If there's a problem, don't just send a bloody email, pick up the phone, like be the human. Don't just be another element of, digital stuff. It just, I feel like they're the brands that will do well in the future, those that can really blend those two things together.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take this opportunity to make you aware of a brand new tool that we've just created called the Exit Readiness Assessment. Now, it is for founders and CEOs that are looking to exit from their business operations. Now, it doesn't matter even if you're not looking to exit right now, I would highly recommend to go and take the assessment straight away. It helps you to identify areas in your business that you need to work on to help you towards that exit strategy. And at the end of it, you get a personalized report on some of the areas that you're doing particularly well in and some of the areas that you need to make some improvements to. Make sure you head over to readytoexit.scoreapp.com. That's readytoexit.scoreapp.com. Enjoy. I feel like a lot of us are becoming like digital hermits. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like you hide under a rock when really all you need is just that human personal touch rather than trying to create something which is just complicated or stuff that you really have very little knowledge in. Does that make sense? And
It does. I mean, look, it's that authenticity piece, isn't it? I often think this with my socials. So I've grown my socials over the last year, basically from like 20,000 followers to nearly 500,000 or something across platform. And some of the content, like, don't get me wrong, it's education. I'm trying to genuinely support people. I spend a lot of time each month curating and putting thought into this. But some of it, I'm like, you know what? I should just pick up the bloody camera more and just talk. Like this is why doing these podcasts and stuff is good, because actually people just get to see the real you.
Yeah, of course.
And I think, behind all of this, like, well, for the algorithm, you must write the hook this way. You must break information. It's like in the end, everything just ends up looking the same. And that side of it is frustrating. But if you go off piste, you don't get the reach. So it's it's an interesting, very interesting world.
Just before we get back on track, actually, I do feel like there's too many of those types of posts, detailed, and everyone seems to be speaking about the same thing over and over again. I don't know about you, but I used to really enjoy reading some good quality LinkedIn content, but now it's just I feel like a lot of the content that's out there, you can tell that it's been created by AI because it's bold, italic, there's a lot of pinpointers there, and it's like people are just getting bloody lazy. Of course I use AI, I think most people do, but I do it to complement me, not like to replace me.
No. I think again it's that blend, isn't it, that's key. I think if you're putting out content that's personal brand related, it should be personal, otherwise you're just kind of just going for followers. But actually, are those followers buying into you as a community, as a person, as an individual? Probably not. They just like the quote that you put out or whatever. And that side of that industry, I think is pretty.
It's pretty dark as well.
It is.
With regards to your experience as well, tell us a little bit more. Can you walk us through like maybe a decision-making process that you'd used in your entrepreneurial time or running a business, when things got really chaotic, or are there any specific types of decision making processes that you put in place when things got a little bit heated, things got a little bit chaotic, things are getting, is there anything that springs to mind?
I think on like a rudimentary level, one that's worth talking about is, and I've had this in each of my businesses as they've scaled, there's always that kind of seesaw effect of like, you focus on new revenue and then you have this operational challenge down here where you don't probably have the processes or the people to fix it. And the thing of trying to get that balance so it doesn't swing as far up and down, and you can kind of find a rhythm, that's important. I think the only way I've ever found that to work is by actually, from a founder perspective, relinquishing control earlier and actually getting the right people into the right seats to be able to deliver on things that you can't or shouldn't be doing. That's been a really critical thing for me. So I do talk about this with my team a lot as well. It's like there's certain functions in the business that should naturally sit with me. There's lots that shouldn't. And those ones that shouldn't, because either I'm just not very good at them or I have no passion for them, we have to get the right people in the right seat. Even if it costs us a bit more money or it, means pivoting somebody else's role, there must be passion and there must be an element of skill as well in order to facilitate it. So implementing that's been important. And I have to be honest, in my last business, Digital Ethos, we did not get that right for a few years. And what we were getting is like 5-6 new clients a month, 2 or 3 going out the bottom end because we didn't have the processes, and then a few staff members leaving because they were unhappy and they're overworked. And like, it's that, trying to get that balance right. I think as a leader and as a manager, I changed a lot in that time, because initially I was like, founder, oh my God, the business is working. Oh my God, we're making money. Keep plowing ahead at all costs. But there's like a human casualty element to that in clients and staff that in the end, and again, this is the gift of success as well, you're able to reflect and go, well, I wouldn't do it like that again. But arguably, it's what the business maybe needed, but with a bit of smarter intelligence around it, we could have stopped those holes in the bucket. That hopefully is a slightly long-winded way of explaining, get the right people in the right seats.
It's really interesting about what you just said, though, because you highlighted something which I think is really crucial. You had highlighted about the fact that when things were going really well, you doubled down on what went well, which in your case was business growth. So, more clients come in. Okay, let's just continue to focus on leads and leads and leads and leads and leads. I talked about this actually on a LinkedIn post today, actually, which was a personal story. My mindset is that if I'm getting business growth, then I should just focus on business growth. But then everything else then becomes secondary. But then there's a downfall to that, which is what you've just highlighted, didn't you? And I suppose then you're in danger of growing too fast. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, isn't it? What's too fast? I guess what too fast is the inability to stabilize the revenue you're bringing in. That's definitely something I've experienced. And I would love to, at some point in my career, be part of like a fast growth tech company that goes through that at like exponential rate. But that is a huge challenge to deal with. I mean, they just chuck more people at it, right? It's the only thing you can do. But I had it on a service-based business, which, generally are a lot slower than those kind of pivot curves. Although it was still fast for us. We had, kind of team-wise, we were bringing on at least 2 new team members a month at one point for a couple of years straight. Wow. And so it was a reasonable amount, and we found that hard to integrate and to get right. And also the other thing that I didn't do early enough is build the right senior leadership team. I think I was scared to spend, and I was holding on too tight to like profitability and all of those things. And again, hadn't gone out and raised any money, wasn't taking any risk other than what was my risk. So was probably a little bit more cautious than some would be. I do think that's set me up well, though. Now, any business I do, I focus first on how quickly can we get to profitability. And it's amazing how many people I coach that never think like that. They're just thinking, well, we just keep taking on more investment. We'll just keep scaling. It's like, okay, great. There's something in that if you are Google. And you've got all of these AI companies as well now that are spinning out of people's bedrooms. I mean, it's a fascinating time, absolutely amazing. Like you can vibe code something that would have taken you a year before in about a week. Insane. How many of them will stand the test of time though? Not sure, but they're all raising loads of money.
Yeah, very interesting. And I mean, we've had We've had numerous guests actually here talking about raising capital. Fascinating conversation with Callum Lang, which you might be familiar with, but really good guy with raising capital and stuff. And I think that a lot of that gets overlooked, especially when you're calling all the shots and you're focused on one specific. It's like you become tunnel visioned, and then everything else, like you kind of have all those missed opportunities. But I also feel, I don't know about you, Luke, but I also feel like you kind of specifically work within the present rather than kind of thinking future thinking. Did you ever see yourself kind of catching yourself out and thinking, we need to be here, but we're still here, like after X months, X years? Did you ever see that in yourself?
Definitely. I think this is the one of the hardest things of being a small business founder, right? And actually, if you're a single operator as well, and you haven't got someone to bounce off as a co-founder, like, yeah, you can't not be operating in the now because you're problem solving. And I think, what is business? Business is basically solving problems for other people. And that creates problems for you internally, which you have to then fix. And most of the founders' work is either trying to bring revenue in or fix bottlenecks and problems and answer questions to the team members. And the more team members, the more questions, the more time. So it's very hard to be strategic, really, really hard, which is why I think it's so critical that those founders get coaches and mentors, which is the work that now I do. And I know you do a lot of that as well. It's an investment for them, but my God, does it pay off? If I think back the last 3 years of my last business, which was my largest exit, if I hadn't had two kind of mentors side by side me, I think I'd have gone absolutely stir crazy. I had 2 or 3 elements of burnout, was really unhealthy, was not in a good place mentally or physically, but just had to keep working because the buck stopped with me and the business was at a point where it was, making good money. And I couldn't see a way out. And then they just helped to just nurture me to that exit point, which was the right thing for me to do.
You mentioned around the whole kind of burnout thing, and I think we've both probably experienced this. It can be very difficult to get yourself out of the rabbit hole, as Alice would say, how much you spent within that kind of remit of being in burnout stage. Did it last very long for you?
I've probably had 3 or 4 experiences in my life of burnout. Certainly at least 2 major events, I would say, but definitely another one in digital ethos where I was having kind of mini panic attacks. Like, I think I'm a fairly good public speaker. I was always good with the team, certainly if we were doing events, whatever. And I can remember we used to do something that was called our kind of vision day. So once a year, we'd all come together off-site. We'd spend a day, each department would present, and I would kind of lead it as kind of keynote and all that stuff. It was great fun. And, there was 100 of us there or something like that. And I can remember sitting there just after I did the initial keynote, like literally having this full-on sweat panic attack. I had to go out of the room. And it was I just got to this point where I was just holding on way too tight and I couldn't see a way of kind of ever taking any of the stress off my plate. And I think somehow I managed to kind of almost work my way back out of that. I do think having coaches, having the right family, whatever helped, but I could never see a day where I think actually in 5 years I didn't have a sick day, for example. Even when I had COVID and I was really ill and feeling dreadful and just wanted to lay hardly breathing on my bed, I was still working. It's that kind of commitment and peace that I just couldn't feel, I never could feel like I could take a day off. And that's bad, that is really bad. Learning from that, the work that I do with other people, it's like, my God, you're not doing brain surgery today. Like things are still going to be there tomorrow. Like you just have to actually take a step and go, you're knocking years off your life here. And actually, why? What for? If you die tomorrow, the things you think about is actually not the business at all.
Yeah.
So,
did you get like a rude awakening, or were there like kind of warning signs? Was your body saying some stuff? Because you mentioned about panic attacks, which is really fascinating. And I suppose, it kind of goes down this kind of hustle culture of, the more that I do, the more that I propel myself forward. Was that the mindset that you had? How did you kind of get out of that cycle?
Definitely. And it's strange because I wasn't living in the social media world at the time, like I find myself in now, sometimes regrettably. And then you're kind of benchmarking and seeing other people and like you're going, oh God, maybe I'm not doing that well. It's that kind of like we all go through that. But I was just in my own place of like, I can't let this thing fail. So when there'd be clients churning, and we had a period We had a really good boom after COVID, like all marketing agencies, most businesses did. And 2022, towards the end of the deal that I was working on, we had 2 or 3 large clients leave us before the paperwork was signed. And I was like, oh my God. So at that point, like the amount of stress and the amount of trying to chase that revenue back in and that was off the back of what had been a fairly stressful year anyway. So yeah, I just think that the big key for me now has been always to find enough time in the day where I allow for myself. So before this call, for example, I was outside by the pool. I live in Portugal now, had a 45 minutes out there, a bit of sun, whatever, before I came in. And then I do this. I just force myself to I could easily sit here all day, 12 hours, but I don't need to and I don't want to. So it's and also you're not that productive. If you actually do that, what I realized was taking breaks makes you so much more productive. They actually say, there's some psychology on this, that you're only actually productive for about 3 hours a day. If you work an 8-hour day, you're productive for 3 hours. So the other 5 hours, you're just doing stuff that makes you, from a dopamine perspective, feel like you're doing something, but you're actually just wasting time.
Yeah. I think that's where the premise of Tim Ferriss' 4-hour work week came in, wasn't it? And I absolutely agree. Actually, I think we have to kind of figure out a way in which we have to prioritize what becomes urgent. I suppose one of the classic models that I'd used back in the day and still use to this day was Dwight Eisenhower's Matrix, which is a classic, of course, but it's not for everybody. But just kind of, again, just the way that I was particularly wired, that worked really well for me, just being able to prioritize certain elements and delegate all the stuff that I didn't really enjoy doing. Do you know what I mean?
Hey, I'm Frank, and I have hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Before starting Cosentix, I was so uncomfortable with my symptoms, like not being able to sleep on white sheets or wear white clothes. Now I can appreciate the little things.
Cosentix secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if allergic to Cosentix. Get checked for TB before starting. Increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like TB or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if IBD symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTIX or Cosentix.com.
You're stronger than HS. Ask your dermatologist about Cosentix.
100%. That's the key. You need to have some boundaries and non-negotiables for that balance, and there's no other way. There's no other way to get stuff done. You look at these amazing people that we all look up to and aspire to, like Warren Buffett, for example, where he says that he takes 6 or 7 hours a day every day and always has, just to read and educate himself, and that is literally his job, basically. And then the rest of the time he's been managing the company. So it's amazing. I think we can all learn something from that. Like if you're able to commit to doing high value work and then delegate everything else, you will be a great leader.
Yep. Love that. Very good. After each exit, did you ever kind of think to yourself, when you built a business, sorry, let me regurgitate the question. When you built the business, did you always have the exit in mind, or did it come further on down the line? Or did you grow into it and you found more and more experiences? Like, what was the process? What was the way that you built your businesses?
So early on, I would be lying if I said that I'd planned for an exit. I was just trying to figure out whether I could do a business, make it work, make some money. After I had that first sale, though, a new world opened up to me, or my eyes opened up to the fact that, okay, you could build this asset into something that somebody else will want. And actually that makes a lot of sense. So after that, I started doing all of the right hygiene stuff from day one. So building a data room, thinking about who potential acquirers or buyers could be, courting them as early as possible, making sure that I had elements of PR and press and stuff going on that just built a bit of credibility and traction. Started thinking about things like, okay, if I'm a service-based business, should I have contracts in place with my suppliers and with my clients? Absolutely, I should, because that's the intrinsic value. When I had the Experience Day company, I was signing 2-3-year contracts with Experience Day providers, so that had stability in the packages. Like all of those things I learned from early on, that you need those types of triggers to be attractive. So, really, if the way I always explain this on the exit side with clients is, if you were going to buy your business, what would give you comfort and de-risk it for you? And most of the time people know that, but they don't ask themselves that question. And it's going to be the same thing. So it's like, well, I want some contracts, I want some fixed revenue, I want some proof in the numbers over at least a few years. I want, it's all of these but actually it's kind of logical, because if someone said, well, actually go and spend that money yourself, they're the things that you want. And it's typically the things that you should think about when you start a business as well.
When you let's go back to, I just want to backtrack quickly. When you first sold your first business, where did the idea come from when you thought, oh, do you know what? I can actually sell this thing. Was it through a conversation? Walk us through it. Was there, did someone just say to you, hey, Luke, are you looking to sell your business? What did you do?
So I've had, I guess, a fairly fortunate road on this track. So I do a bit of coaching like you do with people that are trying to exit now, and a lot of them have to go and find those buyers. Yes. I never have had to, personally. I have for people, but I never have myself. So again, being, over time becoming more of a marketeer, I've understood what it takes to build some traction in the market that then invites offers. So I've articulated that well, I think, over time. The initial one, I had some contracts in place with a company called IML Concerts back in the day, and they were doing gigs with Lamar, Sugar Babes, going to show my age now, and a little bit.
Love it.
Beverly Knight, Jules Holland, people like that. And they were playing out at these outside concerts. Well, I did a 2-year contract with them, and I had the bars tied up at these events, and there was about 30 events a year. Now, to be completely honest, I took them on naively. I was struggling to facilitate them, and the organizers and I were kind of locking heads a little bit. And a major competitor that they said wanted to come, that had been there the year before but had lost the contract for various reasons, wanted to come back in. And they said, would you mind splitting the agreement with them? And I said, well, so anyway, I had a meeting with that supplier, and they said, look, we'll just buy you. So I was like, well, okay, how much? And the offer they made, I was like, I think that's good. I'll take it. Thank you. So yeah, I didn't even negotiate. This is like how naive I was. I didn't even negotiate. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll take that. And off I went. So that was the first one. Second one, I did something that I didn't know at the time was quite smart. It was a risk, but it played out well. So back in 2010, 2012, there was a lot of track days starting to become popular with Buy a Gift and Red Letter Days and Virgin, etc. But all of them were focused on single car experiences. So you could go drive a Ferrari, and on the day, they might try and upsell you a Lamborghini or a Porsche or whatever. I had an agreement with Silverstone selling those single track days like everybody did. And I went in and I said, look, I think we should sell 4 or 5 cars in a package. We'll just sell them. They come along, we do it for more expensive. Yeah, but people won't spend that amount of money on a package like that. And I said, well, give me exclusivity on a year and I'll try. So I did a 5-car package for nearly 500 quid, and they sold like hotcakes. And off the back of that, within 2 months, because I had exclusivity, one of the major competitors swooped in and said, we basically want to buy you because of that. So that one thing made all the difference on that particular. It was incredible. Like everything else I was doing, it's such a low margin business, that like 5% margin. Typically you make your money on non-activation. So effectively what happens is people don't use their tickets and you make all that money. When they use the tickets, you got to pay the company. So it's about 5%. It's really low. And actually a lot of them operate most big products at a loss, so that the smaller ones that aren't used actually are where you make the money. It's a crazy business, which is why it's been consolidated now, because it's hard for smaller businesses to survive. And then the third exit with Digital Ethos was interesting. So we came out of COVID. I did 2 acquisitions myself, great for PR. I launched in Toronto in Canada. I launched in Germany, all within an 18-month period. The MMA flurry off the back of that was interesting, because they were like, oh, I keep seeing you guys pop up. You're this small regional agency. What's happened? What's going on? And the PR and the press around that, really made all the difference with that. And I had 6 offers over a 12-month period, effectively. One from a large German publisher, which I was quite interested in taking. Then the war in Ukraine kicked off, and they panicked and pulled out. And then had a really good feeling about the Brazilian entity that I went ahead with in the end. So never had to go to market to sell, which has been lucky / some of it has been I think luck, some skill probably.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. When it comes to whether it be your first exit or the one with Digital Ethos, your third exit, after each exit, like what emotions do you go through, like in the days and the weeks after you've sold the business? Like, did you ever feel there was a sense of fulfillment? Did you ever feel lost? Did you feel confused? Did you feel shit, I need to go out and buy some more businesses? Like, what was like, tell us about like from the first to the third, because I guess there's a sense of different feelings, isn't there? There's a different mindset and a shift that you had to make over those years.
There is, and the first was a 5-figure, then a 6-figure, and then so they kind of escalated over time. And I think those early ones was like the first one was like enough to buy a car and have a holiday. The next one was like enough to like buy a house and like have a few more holidays. And then this more recent one was like a life-changing amount, as they would say. Yeah. So I think I had this like gradual stage, and a lot of people get this life-changing amount at different times or whatever. But for me, I think those first exits felt almost more fulfilling in some ways. And I'll tell you why. I had this, because I was burnt out and I had this hard run up to the end of the last business. I kind of felt an element of like, I think relief as well, that like, okay, look, I've reached this outcome. It's bloody hard work building service businesses and trying to make them, there's probably no harder way to make money. So I was like, look, actually there was an element of relief, but also an anticlimax, right? So you build up and you go through this 9-12 months of courting and trying to get the deal over the line. And, we had so many false starts and stuff. And in the end, I was like, my God, just take a breath. The money hits the account, and that's exciting for a minute. But then it was a Monday afternoon. Tried to call my partner. She's not answering. Like, people are at work. There's no one around. There's no champagne bottles popping anywhere because it was all done like virtually. And the rest of the guys were in Brazil. So, that was a bit of an anticlimax. But what I would say is like the beauty of that outcome has been that I'm able to take more time now to reflect and to look at things that give me an element of purpose, which is something I'm really, really privileged for and very always very grateful for. And I'm able to do things that I enjoy as well now more than ever. And that's been the real takeaway. But actually, I think maybe because again, I'm approaching 40, my age, I just don't, my focus now, I think isn't probably on the same things it would have been if I'd had that same success earlier in life, basically.
Really fascinating conversations, and just to kind of get into your mind and get an understanding of why you feel the way you feel, because I think again it helps our listeners to give them a broad perspective of the feeling of what you could experience if you did sell your business, right? Like, what's the expectation? Because we all have different experiences. Because I know that, well, we'll both know, Luke, that I remember doing many different interviews with people that have exited the business. And a lot of them, but the majority of them actually regret exiting the business for whatever reason. Founder's remorse. Did you ever experience that?
Absolutely not. Not a single day of it, actually. The only one I had it on was the Experience Day company, because I actually really enjoyed it. And I feel like we were just getting traction. And it was I kind of sold maybe arguably too early. And with Digital Ethos, absolutely not. It was the right decision for me. I've never had a sleepless night over it. It's just enabled me now to go on and do other stuff. And that's the way I see it. I think I've got this kind of element of my personality that always wants to chase the next thing. And I think that's destructive in some ways and difficult because it means you're never fully happy. But I'm trying to work on that with purpose. And I think, it's just enabled me to do more of what I want to do. And the next thing, hopefully will be bigger and bigger. And that's, that's just how I roll.
Just out of curiosity, we kind of touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but after exiting, you've now exited 3 times, which is great. Most people barely exit once, if at all. I mean, these stats are pretty low, aren't they? I think it's less than 18% of businesses or business founders exit their business. You've been privileged to do it 3 times. How have you evolved in terms of your personal identity and how you kind of view the world? Like, how have you shifted as a person?
I think, a lot of what's kind of happened to me is I've tried to focus more on now being a good influence and leader for other people as well. I think that's something, I think early on, I was probably very self-focused, self-motivated, and actually, I think I've shifted a lot I've matured certainly, and I've shifted a lot in my mentality and want to help and educate and try and improve those stats for others. So a lot of the work I do now is literally to help others achieve success. And that really, and obviously there's an element of that helps me still feel and reach success along the way. But that is really what I've pivoted to now. It's like, how do I enable others to reach successful outcomes, sell their businesses? And it's a fascinating journey to be on.
Is there any, being from the first Luke that exited the business to the Luke that you are now, what would you say to the Luke back then when you first exited? Like, what advice would you give him?
Negotiate, push it up a bit. I probably would have just said, look, don't be scared to take more chances. When I had that experience after that modeling piece, I would have kind of shaked myself a bit because I was in a very dark place at the time with that. But I think, really what it comes down to is like in your 20s, I think you can test and iterate, right? Just give it a go, like try things. I tend to find if you need help or you want to learn from others, if you ask them, help's normally there. People are normally willing to give you an answer to a question or a response or a 5-minute call or whatever. I don't think people do that enough. I think if you've got a business idea and you're in love with it and you're really passionate about it, then explore it, and there'll always be a way to get it started. It doesn't matter where you are in your life, world, financially, whatever. If you ask enough people, someone will help you.
Here's a part of the episode that I really like to do, which is around kind of like getting you to coach our audience or coaching me. And a lot of our listeners are mainly people that are looking to exit or scale and exit, whatever it might be. And for those that are completely inexperienced to this whole world of exiting, it can feel kind of scary, especially if you've not done it before. You've done it now 3 times. What would be, say, I don't know, 5 things that I need to have in order for me to kind of like set, I suppose, use it as a benchmark or as a platform to maybe get me on my way? Any thoughts?
Yeah, so to get you on your way to exit effectively, to get going.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So I think, first and foremost, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, you need to put yourself in the shoes of that potential buyer. And that then gives you some clear benchmarks. So things like, okay, have I got my data room, which is a fancy word of saying, have I got all my stuff in the right place? So that if someone needs to look at my business, they can go and actually evaluate whether it's been ran successfully and well. So like just get everything into a well organized filed system, so you've got that structure. I would say then it's about really thinking about if you've got client relationships, do you have contracts? Do you have defendability around the relationships? What can you build if you don't have, like systemize IP, for example, internally? So even what a lot of people forget is there's different types of assets and IP. So if you've got a way of working and onboarding a client or a way of shipping a product that's a bit unique, that's IP. So build it, methodologize it out and put it into some sort of structure because there's value to that. Then I think it's about really thinking about, okay, well, who are the potential buyers? Get a little list together, make sure you're connected, make sure you're following, you're engaging them on social media, make sure you are looking at that persona and you're doing something that actually gives you visibility on that person. Then I think another thing that's important is go and Google yourself and the business and start having a look at like, what will somebody see if they start searching and considering my business for an acquisition? And if it's not much and there's not much press or coverage and there's not much stuff going on, fix that. Because it's important. Yeah. Perception is everything, right? Then I think number 5 would be map out a clear time frame and an expectation on what you feel is a fair value. But it's less about feel. It's more about, if it's an EBITDA multiple or if it's whatever, get that done by your accountants, understand what you're looking at, realistic, have a high, medium and low benchmark, see whether that fits with your expectations. And if it does, set a time frame and then go and work on it. And I'd recommend if it's your first time doing it, have an advisor or someone around you that can help facilitate that, because there's a lot of potential road bumps, wasted money, all of those things that you can mitigate. And also success level wise, you've got a much higher chance of success if you've got people in the room that have done it before. So I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah. They say that your environment dictates your performance, right?
It does.
Which is very, very true. And I'm a big believer in that. That is that's great, guys. By the way, if you hear all of that, what I would highly recommend you do, pause this podcast and rewind, in fact, the whole episode, because Luke's dropping some great golden nuggets here. And really, it's a masterclass in a nutshell for people that are looking to scale up and exit. Then this isn't something that you would find in a encyclopedia or a textbook. This is real life insights. Like Luke has gone through and has got the scars to show it. So I wanted to, again, endorse you to make sure that you pause this recording, go back, re-listen to that. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or on YouTube, watch the same again for the video, because again, you'll get a bit of a feel for the way that we're connecting with you guys. But we really want to help you more than anything else. But that was great, Luke. So I'm just thinking, because we're coming towards kind of the end of our conversation now, what is next for you? I mean, listen, you've exited 3 times. I mean, in a nutshell, I suppose you could probably go to Hawaii, go retire with a pina colada and say, thank you very much. But what does success look to you now? What are you working on?
There's a few things. So I've mentioned it a couple of times, but purpose, trying to find, I think this is the luxury of anybody that makes some money. They start banging on about purpose, and I'm trying not to be that person, but it is nice to be able to have that reflective moment and go, okay, cool. What actually will give me some of that? Certainly educating, supporting people on social media has done an element of that, and I am enjoying doing it, and the coaching side. But for me, I've got a few ideas which I'm exploring at the moment. There'll definitely be a new business launching in August. I can't speak too much about it at this stage. It's in stealth at the moment. But again, it's around this kind of scale to sale methodology and support around that, but very niched. And then everyone's got a number, I think. As you go through this exit process, you have a number in your head of and I think you need to have one, otherwise the benchmark and the goalposts move and move and move. So I've got a number. So, I think one more exit, could get me there. So I've got some work to do still. And I'm still, arguably young enough, a few gray hairs, obviously, but, I've got some work to do next 10 years. And then, who knows after that. But I love working. I love building. I love being part. I love advising. I can't see a day where I wouldn't do something, to be completely honest. Just sitting on the beach is nice, but it gets a bit boring.
Hey, you're a little bit like me, kind of shiny penny syndrome. Where's the next thing, right? I'm totally with you. Guys, I hope that mine and Luke's conversation has been, number one, fascinating. I certainly have been writing lots of notes here. But the great thing is, we'll give you a bit of a heads up as well. Me and Luke are going to be collaborating, hopefully, on something in the future, which I'm excited about. So we're going to be discussing that, about how we can help you guys more than anything else with regards to the scaling and exiting. So watch this space and see what happens. So that's going to be exciting as well. Listen, Luke, just wanted to say thanks so much for being on the show. It's been a great jam, right?
Yeah, it's been really cool. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, very good. For you guys as well, if this is the first time that you've listened to the podcast, do me a favor. If there's anything that you could do for me and Luke, please head over to Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Make sure that you go over there, give us a follow or a subscribe, and leave a comment or a review on any of those platforms. We would be really super grateful for that. I certainly would be. Because guess what? We want to hear from you guys. We want to make sure that we can connect to you as listeners. And we want to make sure that we're on point with regards to it. We've got listeners in over 45 countries now. So, it's pretty good. And we're getting a lot of tractions from all over the world. So listen, we've put all of Luke's stuff, if you want to connect with him, over on social media. Please do so. His links are in the show description notes, of course. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out to myself as well. Anyway, from me and Luke, thanks so much. And hopefully we'll see you guys again on The Business Strategist. Take care. See you soon. Cheers.